The desert stretches away in all directions, a sea of sand and stone beneath an endless sky. This is North Africa in the summer of 1942, where the war has come to one of the oldest and emptiest places on earth. Here, beneath the weight of heat and silence, armies move like slow currents across an ocean floor. The land itself seems to breathe with a patience that makes human urgency feel small and temporary. By day, the sun turns the sand to molten gold, shimmering in waves that blur the horizon. By night, the temperature plunges, and the desert becomes a place of silver shadows and profound cold. In this vastness, the war is fought not only with tanks and artillery, but with water and fuel, with ammunition and food, with the long, vulnerable lines that stretch across hundreds of miles of nothing. Supply columns move through the darkness like blood through veins, carrying what is needed to sustain the men at the front. It is the supply trucks that are the true lifeline here. Unglamorous, essential, moving through the night when the air is cooler, and enemy aircraft are grounded by darkness. The drivers who guide these convoys know the weight of what they carry, and the risks of the journey. Tonight, as the sun begins its slow descent toward the western edge of the world, another convoy prepares to move. 23 trucks wait at a staging ground near Tobruk, their cargo carefully loaded, their engines soon to rumble to life. The men who will drive them through the moonlit hours are checking equipment, filling canteens, studying maps one last time. The desert waits, patient and indifferent, as it has waited for millennia. And in this waiting, there is a strange kind of peace, the peace of ancient stone and endless sand, of stars that will soon emerge one by one to guide the way forward into the gathering dark. The supply depot sits a few miles inland from Tobruk, where the desert meets the memory of the sea. As the sun descends toward the western horizon, the light turns thick and golden, pouring like honey across the sand and the canvas and a weathered metal of 24 trucks arranged in careful rows. The air smells of diesel fuel and hot dust, of engine oil, and the faint metallic tang that comes from ammunition crates stacked in pyramids near the loading bays. Men move with the practiced efficiency of routine, drivers checking tire pressure, mechanics making final adjustments to temperamental engines, quartermasters marking manifests with blunt pencils worn smooth by weeks of use. A truck door slams somewhere, the sound flat and absolute in the open air. Boots crunch on gravel. Someone laughs, the sound brief and tired. The day's heat is finally releasing its grip, and you can feel the temperature beginning its slow descent toward the cold that will come with full darkness. Canvas tarps are lashed down over cargo beds. Water cans are topped off and secured. A young private double checks the lashing on a load of fuel drums, his hands moving through the knots with the muscle memory of repetition. Nearby, a sergeant makes notes in a worn ledger, his face creased with concentration and the accumulated fatigue of too many convoys, too many nights crossing dangerous ground. The light continues to fade, turning from gold to amber to something softer still. Shadows lengthen across the compound, stretching toward the east like dark fingers reaching for the coming night. In the distance, beyond the perimeter, the desert waits, patient, vast, and utterly still. This is the quiet before departure, the moment of preparation, the breath before the plunge. Everything is almost ready. Soon the engines will start. Soon the journey will begin. But for now, there is only this, the settling dusk, the smell of diesel and sand, and the steady, unhurried work of men making ready for the night ahead. In the fading light, faces emerge from the amber dust, each one a story, each one far from home. Thomas leans against the tailgate of his Bedford truck, running a hand along the wall metal. He is 23. Though the desert has aged him in ways that mirrors cannot show. His hands are stained with oil and sand. his uniform bleached by sun and salt. He thinks of his sister's last letter, still folded in his breast pocket, the paper soft from repeated reading. Nearby, Corporal Davies checks tire pressure with methodical care. He is older, perhaps 40, with lines around his eyes that deepen when he squints against the dust. He was a bus driver in Cardiff before the war. Now he drives supplies across a landscape that would swallow Wales whole without noticing. The mechanic, a thin Scotsman named MacLeod, moves between vehicles with a wrench in one hand and a cigarette tucked behind his ear. He speaks little, but his hands are gentle on the engines, coaxing life from tired metal with the patience of a man who understands machinery better than words. Sergeant Winters walks the line, his boots crunching softly on the hardpan. His face is weathered leather, his eyes perpetually scanning, calculating, worrying. He carries the weight of 23 trucks and 47 men on shoulders that seem both broad enough and far too narrow for the burden. He pauses beside Thomas, offers a brief nod, a small gesture that contains volumes of unspoken understanding. They do not speak much, these men. The desert has taught them the value of silence, the way words can feel too heavy in the vast emptiness. Instead, they share cigarettes, check each other's loads, adjust straps, and tighten bolts with the quiet communion of those who depend on one another. Absolutely. The light continues to drain from the sky, and the faces begin to blur into shadow, becoming silhouettes against the deepening blue. Each man alone with his thoughts, yet bound together by the journey ahead. The desert transforms as the light drains away from the sky. It happens slowly at first, then all at once. The way twilight always seems to work in this ancient land. The sand, which burned gold and amber under the afternoon sun, shifts through a palette of softer hues. Ochre fades to pale honey, then to ash, then to something closer to pearl. The heat, which pressed down like a physical weight all day, begins its slow retreat. You can feel it lifting, degree by degree, as if the earth itself is exhaling after holding its breath for hours. The air loses its shimmer. The horizon, which wavered and danced in the midday glare, becomes steady and sharp. Above, the sky deepens. Blue becomes violet, becomes indigo. The first stars appear, not all at once, but one by one, as if being lit by an unseen hand. Venus hangs low in the west, brilliant and unwavering. Then come the others, pinpricks of ancient light, the same stars that guided caravans across these sands, centuries before tanks and trucks ever marked the ground. The temperature begins its nightly plunge. In a few hours, men will pull coats tight and stamp their feet against the cold. But for now, in this brief window of twilight, the air is almost perfect, neither hot nor cold, but balanced, gentle, forgiving. Shadows lengthen across the sand, stretching toward the east. Every rock, every vehicle, every man casts a long dark twin across the cooling ground. The world becomes a place of contrasts, light and shadow, warmth and coming cold, day and approaching night. Somewhere in the distance a bird calls, one of the desert larks, settling for the evening. The sound carries far in the still air, then fades. The desert is preparing itself for darkness, and the men of the convoy prepare themselves as well, for the long journey ahead, under stars and moon, across this timeless patient land. The final preparations unfold with the quiet precision of ritual. Men move along the line of trucks, their footsteps soft in the sand, each one attending to the small tasks that might mean everything in the hours ahead. Thomas checks his water canteens one more time, shaking each one gently, listening to the reassuring slosh of liquid inside. 4 canteens, all full. He secures them in their canvas holders, the metal cool against his fingertips in the gathering dusk. Nearby, a mechanic kneels beside a rear wheel, testing the lug nuts with a wrench, the soft clink of metal on metal. A satisfied nod. He moves to the next truck, his torch beam dancing across the sand. In the lead vehicle, the navigator spreads his maps across the bonnet, the paper crackling softly in the evening breeze. He traces the route with one finger, committing landmarks to memory. A hooded torch casts a small pool of amber light, carefully shielded from view beyond the depot perimeter. The sergeant leans in, studying the route, asking quiet questions about timing, about the condition of the track. All along the column, engines are tested one final time. The rumble rolls down the line, 1, 2, 3, then silence again. Each driver listening to his engine's particular voice, knowing its rhythms, alert for any sound that doesn't belong. The cargo has been checked and rechecked. Ammunition crates secured with rope, fuel drums wedged tight, medical supplies packed carefully in padded boxes, food tins stacked and covered with canvas tarps. 23 trucks carrying the lifeblood of the front line. The light continues to drain from the sky. The first stars appear, faint at first, then growing stronger. Venus hangs low in the west, brilliant and steady. Thomas climbs into his cab, settling into the worn seat. He adjusts the mirror, tests the clutch, rests his hands on the steering wheel. Everything is ready. Everything is as it should be. Now there is only the waiting and the quiet gathering of resolve for the journey ahead. The order comes quietly, passed from the sergeant to the first driver, then down the line. A simple hand signal visible in the last blue light of dusk. No shouting, no fanfare, just the silent understanding that the time has come to move. Thomas watches the sergeant's hand drop, and he turns the key. The engine coughs once, then catches, settling into a deep, steady rumble that he feels through the steering wheel, through the seat, through his entire body. All along the column, other engines wake, one after another, a chorus of mechanical voices rising into the cooling air. The sound is both comforting and ominous. 23 trucks, their engines creating a low thunder that rolls across the empty depot. The vibration travels through the ground. Thomas can see the truck ahead of him, shuddering slightly, exhaust rising in faint wisps against the darkening sky. Headlights remain dark. They will navigate by moonlight and instinct, by the faint shape of the vehicle ahead. To show lights would be to announce their presence to anyone watching from the vast emptiness beyond. The first truck begins to roll. Thomas watches its taillights, covered, showing only the faintest red glow through narrow slits. Then the truck ahead of him moves, and he releases the brake, feels his own vehicle lurch forward, the weight of the cargo settling. The column becomes a single organism, each part connected to the next. The spacing must be maintained, close enough to follow, far enough to avoid collision if someone stops suddenly. It is a dance they have practiced, a rhythm they know. Thomas grips the wheel and follows the dim red glow ahead. Behind him, another driver does the same. The convoy moves as one, leaving the safety of the depot, rolling slowly toward the open desert. The journey has begun, and in the steady rumble of engines and the gentle forward motion, there is something almost peaceful, the surrender to movement, to purpose, to the long night ahead. The convoy leaves the relative safety of the depot behind, moving into the gathering dark, like a slow river flowing into an unknown sea. The last glow of the perimeter lights fades in the mirrors, swallowed by distance and dust, until there is nothing behind but memory and emptiness. The desert opens before them, trackless, ancient, indifferent to the small procession of trucks carrying their cargo through the night. No roads here, only the faint traces of previous convoys, tire marks already half erased by wind and time. The navigator, in the lead vehicle, follows compass bearings and instinct, reading the land in ways that cannot be written down or taught, only learned through repetition and survival. Thomas feels the immensity of it settling over him, like a physical weight. The sky above is enormous, deepening from indigo to black, scattered with more stars than he has ever seen in England's clouded skies. The horizon stretches in every direction, unbroken, offering no shelter, no landmark, No point of reference, except the truck ahead and the truck behind. He becomes aware of how small they are. 23 vehicles, perhaps 60 men, a tiny constellation of metal and flesh, moving across a landscape that has witnessed empires rise and fall, that has absorbed the footsteps of Roman legions and Carthaginian armies, that will remain long after this war is forgotten. The wind carries sand against the windscreen, with a sound like whispered secrets. The temperature continues its steady fall. Thomas adjusts his grip on the wheel, feeling the vibration of the engine through his hands, the only solid thing in a world that seems to be dissolving into darkness and distance. They are committed now. There is no turning back, only forward, into the gathering dark, beneath the watching stars. The moon rises slowly, inevitably, from the eastern horizon. At first, it is just a glow, a pale luminescence that seems to emanate from the earth itself. Then the edge appears, a sliver of silver lifting above the line where sand meets sky. The convoy continues its steady progress, and the moon continues its ancient climb, the two movements synchronized in the vastness of the desert night. As it rises higher, the moon reveals itself in fullness, round and bright, impossibly large on the horizon. It casts a light that transforms everything. The desert, which had been dissolving into darkness, now emerges again in silver and shadow. Every dune, every rock, every ripple in the sand becomes visible once more, painted in shades of pewter and pearl. Thomas glances up through the windscreen and feels the strange duality of the moonlight. It is beautiful, achingly so. The kind of beauty that makes him think of home, of walking with his sister across the downs on summer evenings. But here, in this place, beauty carries a price. Visibility works both ways. What the moon reveals to him, it also reveals to others. The convoy becomes more visible, more vulnerable, silhouettes moving across a silver stage. The shadows cast by the moonlight are sharp and dark, pooling beside rocks and in the lee of dunes. They create a landscape of contrast, of light and void, where depth becomes difficult to judge. The world takes on an almost theatrical quality, as if they are driving through a carefully lit scene, rather than across actual terrain. The air itself seems to glow faintly, dust particles catching and scattering the lunar light. Thomas can see the truck ahead of him more clearly now, can make out the shape of the driver's head, the outline of the canvas cover over the cargo bed. The moon climbs higher, growing smaller and brighter, settling into its watch over the desert, and the small column of men passing beneath its ancient, indifferent gaze. The truck settles into its rhythm now, a steady, almost musical cadence that becomes the heartbeat of the night. The engine hums its low, constant note, neither loud nor quiet, simply present, a sound that fills the cabin and becomes, after a time, a kind of silence of its own. Beneath Thomas, the suspension creaks and sighs with each undulation of the desert floor. The springs compress and release, compress and release, a gentle rocking motion like a ship on a calm sea. His body learns this rhythm, anticipates it, moves with it rather than against it. The tires make their soft, persistent sound against the hard-packed sand, a continuous whisper, shh, 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 not the sharp crunch of gravel, but something softer, more forgiving. The desert here is firm, ancient, compressed by millennia into something almost solid. Thomas's hands rest lightly on the steering wheel. Small corrections, nothing more. The truck knows its way, following the dim shape of the vehicle ahead. His eyes have adjusted fully to the moonlight now. He can see the sergeant's truck, perhaps 30 yards forward, a dark silhouette against the silver sand. The dashboard instruments glow faintly, oil pressure steady, temperature normal, fuel gauge slowly descending. These small lights are companionable in the darkness, like embers in a hearth. Thomas glances at them occasionally, reading their quiet reassurances. Behind him he can hear the soft clinking of the cargo, and the ignition boxes shifting slightly with the truck's motion. Water cans, settling against their restraints. The sound of purpose, the sound of things being carried where they're needed. His breathing slows to match the rhythm of the journey. In and out, in and out. The cold air sharp in his lungs, then warm as he exhales. The hypnotic quality of the drive begins to work its gentle magic. Not sleep, but something like meditation. A state of calm alertness, where time seems to stretch and soften. The convoy moves, as 123 trucks, breathing together, rolling forward through the ancient night. In the darkness of the cab, with only the faint glow of the instrument panel casting shadows across his hands, Thomas finds his mind beginning to wander. The steady rhythm of the truck, the endless stretch of moonlit sand, the hypnotic quality of the journey, all of it creates a space where thoughts drift like smoke. He thinks of home, of England, of green fields that seem impossibly vivid now, almost unreal in their greenness. The memory of rain, actual rain, falling soft and steady through an afternoon, feels like something from another lifetime. The smell of wet earth, the sound of water running in the gutters along the lane near his family's cottage. His sister's last letter sits folded in his breast pocket. He's read it so many times, he knows it by heart. She writes about ordinary things, the garden, the chickens, a dance at the village hall. Her words are carefully cheerful, but he can read between the lines. The worry she doesn't quite express, the way she signs off. Come home safe, Tommy. The distance between here and there feels impossible to measure. Not just miles, though there are thousands of those, but the gulf between this moonlit desert and those green fields, between the weight of the rifle beside him and the memory of Sunday dinner, between the man he's becoming and the boy who left. His co-driver shifts in sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. The truck ahead is a dark shape against the silver sand, its tailgate swaying gently with the movement over the uneven ground. The moon continues its arc across the sky, patient and eternal. Thomas blinks, refocuses on the road, or rather the absence of road. The tracks of the vehicle ahead, the compass bearing, the simple task of following, of maintaining distance, of staying alert. The thoughts settle back down, like sand after wind. The present moment returns. The truck, the night, the journey continuing, mile after steady mile, beneath the watching stars. The desert cold settles in, like a presence, tangible and insistent. Thomas feels it first in his fingertips, then creeping up his arms, despite the rough wool of his uniform. The steering wheel grows cold beneath his hands, the metal seeming to draw warmth from his skin rather than receive it. He reaches for his greatcoat with one hand, pulling it tighter around his shoulders without taking his eyes from the moonlit track ahead. Around him, in the trucks before and behind, other men are doing the same. The paradox of the desert reveals itself with the patience of the night. Scorching by day, frigid after dark, the same sand that burned through boot leather at noon now radiates cold like a vast refrigerator of stone and dust. His breath becomes visible in the moonlight, small clouds that dissipate quickly in the dry air. Each exhalation a reminder of life, of warmth, of the body's quiet persistence against the elements. His co-driver stirs, pulling a blanket up to his chin, muttering something in his half-sleep about English winters, about how at least the cold at home came with the promise of a fire and a proper roof. The temperature continues its steady fall. Thomas estimates it must be near freezing now, perhaps below. The metal frame of the truck creaks softly as it contracts in the cold. Everything seems sharper in this chill. Sounds carry further. The stars burn brighter. Even thought itself feels clearer, more focused. He flexes his fingers on the wheel, maintaining circulation, an old trick learned in training. The convoy maintains its pace, each truck a small island of human warmth, moving through an ocean of cold. And still the moon watches, indifferent and beautiful, casting its silver light over everything. The cold sand, the cold metal, the warm breath of men far from home, carrying on through the desert night. In the lead vehicle, the navigator sits with his instruments spread before him. A compass, its luminous dial glowing faintly green in the darkness. A map weighted down at the corners. A sextant resting carefully in its case. These are the tools that keep the column on course, through a landscape without roads, without signposts, without mercy for those who lose their way. He looks up through the windscreen at the sky. The stars are extraordinary tonight. Polaris steady in the north, Orion striding across the southern heavens. His belt, a perfect line of brilliance. The same constellations that guided Phoenician sailors, Roman legions, Bedouin caravans across these same sands. Ancient light, ancient knowledge, serving a modern war. The navigator makes a calculation, his pencil moving across the map with practiced precision. He checks his compass bearing, adjusts slightly, then speaks quietly into the radio. The lead driver acknowledges with a single word, and the column adjusts its course by a few degrees. A correction measured in minutes of arc, but one that might mean the difference between arrival and being lost in the vastness. Thomas, several trucks back, cannot see these calculations being made, but he feels the slight change in direction, the way his truck follows the vehicle ahead. There is trust in this. Trust in the navigator's skill, in the reliability of celestial mechanics, in methods that have guided travelers for millennia. The moon provides light to drive by, but it is the stars that provide direction. They burn cold and steady in the desert air, undimmed by any earthly light. Each one a distant sun, each one a fixed point in the turning sky. The navigator knows them by name and position. He reads them as others read books. The convoy moves on, guided by points of light so far away that their glow began its journey years ago. Ancient light, showing the way home. The first hour passes in a kind of measured rhythm, each minute marked by the steady turning of wheels against the ancient earth. Thomas has settled into the particular alertness that long night driving demands, a state between waking and dreaming, where the body performs its task, while the mind floats just slightly above it all. The convoy maintains its careful pace across the moonlit expanse. 23 trucks moving as one organism, each driver keeping precise distance from the vehicle ahead. Not too close, not too far. The spacing is deliberate, calculated, close enough to maintain cohesion, far enough that trouble with one truck won't cascade through the entire column. No incidents yet. This is both reassuring and somehow more tense than if something had already happened. The waiting carries its own weight. Every sound is examined, catalogued, assessed. The particular whine of the engine, is that normal, or is something beginning to fail? The crunch of tires, is that simply hard-packed sand, or did the surface just change in a way that matters? Thomas's hands rest lightly on the steering wheel, making tiny corrections without conscious thought. His eyes sweep the horizon in a regular pattern. Left, center, right, mirrors, gauges, then back again. The training has become instinct. Beside him, his co-driver shifts position, trying to find comfort on the hard seat. Neither speaks. There's nothing that needs saying. The engine provides all the conversation necessary. Its steady rumble, a kind of mechanical lullaby, oddly soothing, despite everything it represents. The moon watches from above, patient and eternal. It has seen convoys like this before, in other wars, other centuries. It will see them again. For now, it simply illuminates the path, turning the desert into a silver sea, and the trucks into small boats crossing an endless, silent ocean. The first hour passes. Then begins the second. The signal passes down the line, a single red light, raised and lowered twice, one by one. The trucks slow, then stop. Engines idle, a low collective rumble that vibrates through the cold desert air. The sound is almost comforting now, a mechanical heartbeat in the vast silence. Thomas sets the brake and feels the truck settle beneath him. The sudden stillness is disorienting. after so much motion. His body still sways slightly, phantom movement from the hours of driving. He opens the door, and the cold rushes in, sharp, clean, carrying the mineral scent of ancient sand. His boots meet the ground with a soft crunch. All along the column, men are climbing down, dark silhouettes against the moonlit desert. They move quietly, instinctively keeping voices low. There is something about this landscape that demands reverence, or perhaps caution. The two feelings are not so different here. Thomas walks to the rear of his truck, checking the ropes that secure the cargo. His hands work automatically, testing tension, examining knots. Everything is as it should be. Nearby, a mechanic kneels beside a wheel, running his fingers along the tire tread, listening for the whisper of escaping air. These small rituals of maintenance, performed in moonlight. The sergeant moves along the line like a shepherd counting his flock. His footsteps are barely audible. Now and then a murmured word. "All right then," or "Good lad," soft as the breeze. The men nod, stretch stiff shoulders, take long drinks from canteens. The water is cold, metallic, precious. Between the sounds of men and machines, the silence asserts itself. It is enormous, this silence. It seems to have weight and texture. In it, you can hear your own breathing, the creak of leather, the distant whisper of sand moving across sand, the desert breathing in its sleep. Minutes pass, measured by the slow arc of stars. Then the signal comes again. Time to move. The men return to their trucks, carrying the brief rest with them like a gift, settling back into their seats as the engines rise from idle to a purposeful rumble once more. The sergeant moves quietly along the line of idling trucks, his boots making soft sounds against the hard-packed sand. His name is Williams, though most simply call him Sarge. His face, weathered by 3 years of desert sun and wind, catches the moonlight as he pauses beside each vehicle. He doesn't say much. A hand on a shoulder here. A quiet, "all right, lad," there. He checks the tie-downs on the loads with practiced fingers, testing the tension of ropes, ensuring nothing has shifted during the first leg of the journey. Small things, important things. At the fourth truck, he finds a young private, adjusting his rifle strap with trembling hands. Whether from cold or nerves is hard to say. The sergeant stops, reaches into his coat, and produces a slightly battered tin of barley sugar sweets. He offers one without comment. The private takes it with a grateful nod, and something in his shoulders relaxes. The sergeant continues his rounds, moving through pools of shadow and silver light. He pauses to exchange a few words with the navigator, checking their position, confirming the route ahead. His voice is low, steady, carrying the calm authority of experience without harshness. Near the rear of the column, he finds Thomas leaning against his truck, gazing up at the stars. The sergeant joins him for a moment, following his gaze upward to the vast canopy of light overhead. Neither speaks. There's no need. Sometimes the weight of responsibility is lighter when shared, even in silence. Right then, the sergeant finally says, his voice barely above a murmur, "Let's get these supplies where they're needed." He moves back toward the lead vehicle, his silhouette dark against the moonlit sand. The men climb back into their trucks, reassured by his presence, by the quiet competence that has brought them this far safely. The engines rumble back to life, and the column prepares to resume its journey through the silver night. The word passes quietly down the line. Moving again, Thomas climbs back into his cab, feeling the cold metal of the door handle against his palm. The seat still holds a trace of warmth from his body. He settles in, adjusting his position, finding that familiar posture that will carry him through the next stretch of darkness. Around him, the other drivers are doing the same. Doors closing with soft metallic clicks. The sound of boots finding pedals, hands gripping steering wheels worn smooth by months of use. Each man returning to his small island of responsibility in the vast ocean of night. The lead truck's engine note changes, rising slightly. Then it begins to roll forward, tires crunching softly against the hard-packed surface. Thomas counts 1, 2, 3, maintaining the proper interval, then releases his brake and feels his own truck ease into motion. The convoy becomes a living thing once more, the mechanical serpent moving through silver light, each segment connected to the next by invisible threads of discipline and trust. The rhythm returns immediately, as if it had never been interrupted. The gentle sway, the steady vibration through the frame, the hypnotic constancy of movement through stillness. The moon has climbed higher now, smaller but brighter. The shadows it casts are shorter, more defined. Every rock, every ripple in the sand stands out with startling clarity. The landscape seems almost unreal in this light, a photographer's study in contrast, a world reduced to its essential forms. Thomas can see the truck ahead of him clearly, its canvas cover pale against the darkness, swaying gently with the motion. Behind him, he knows, another driver watches his taillights with the same steady attention. The chain of watchfulness, the unspoken contract that binds them all. The wind has died down. The air is still and cold and crystalline. Each breath Thomas takes seems to travel deep into his lungs, sharp and clean. The desert breathes with him, patient and eternal. As the convoy rolls on through the silver night, the air changes first, a subtle shift that Thomas feels against his face before he consciously registers it. A breeze, tentative at first, begins to move across the desert from the north, carrying with it the faint, salt-tinged promise of the Mediterranean. Somewhere beyond the horizon in the darkness, the wind touches the sand with gentle fingers, stirring it into motion. Small whirlwinds form and dissolve, dancing across the moonlit expanse like ephemeral spirits. They catch the silver light, becoming visible for a moment. Columns of spinning dust that rise and fall with an almost playful grace. The ancient desert, breathing. Thomas adjusts his grip on the steering wheel as the wind buffets the canvas sides of the truck. The fabric snaps and rustles, a rhythmic percussion that joins the steady rumble of the engine beside him. His co-driver pulls his collar higher against the sudden chill. The wind brings that peculiar desert cold that seems to cut through layers of wool and cotton. Ahead, the lead vehicle's silhouette wavers slightly in the wind-stirred dust. The convoy maintains its steady pace, each truck following the dim shape of the one before it, the chain of shadows moving through shadows. The wind erases their tracks almost as quickly as they're made, the desert reclaiming itself, keeping its secrets. Small pebbles tick against the metal panels of the truck, carried by the strengthening breeze. The sound is oddly soothing, nature's own percussion, older than any war, older than any army that has ever crossed this wasteland. The wind has blown here for millennia, indifferent to the passage of Romans, of Carthaginians, of Crusaders, and now of them. Thomas breathes in the moving air, tasting dust and distance. The wind seems to carry voices from far away, though he knows it's only his imagination, only the way moving air finds resonance in the empty places. Still, there's something almost companionable about it, this reminder that the world is alive, that even here, in this vast emptiness, there is movement, there is breath, there is the patient, eternal rhythm of the desert night. The convoy moves through the silver darkness, and the desert seems to hold its breath around them. Then, from somewhere far away, perhaps 20 miles, perhaps more, comes a sound that doesn't belong to the wind or the engines. A low rumble, distant, muffled by distance and the vastness of empty space. Artillery. The front line speaking its language of thunder and fire, somewhere out there, beyond the horizon. Thomas hears it through the open window of his truck, feels it more than hears it. A pressure in the air, a tremor carried through the ground itself. The sound comes and goes. Sometimes a single deep thump, sometimes a rolling sequence, like summer thunder moving across hills back home. But this is not weather. This is men and machines, locked in their ancient dance. The war that brought them all here, continuing its work, while the convoy threads its careful path through the moonlight. It's strange how distant it seems, how separate from this pocket of relative peace they occupy. The trucks roll on, steady and methodical. The moon continues its arc across the sky, and somewhere out there, in positions marked on maps, men crouch in trenches and gun emplacements, enduring the night. Thomas thinks of the supplies he carries, how they will reach those men, how a case of ammunition or a crate of rations becomes part of that distant conversation of fire and steel. The supply line connects everything. The depot then left behind. This moonlit journey, the front line that rumbles and flashes on the far horizon. Another sound drifts on the night air, fainter still, almost imagined. Aircraft engines, high and distant. Whose, he cannot tell. Just another thread in the tapestry of war that spreads across this ancient desert. The convoy maintains its pace. The sounds fade and return, like the breathing of something vast and terrible. But here in this moment, there is only the steady rhythm of wheels on sand, the moon's cold light, and the knowledge that they are doing their part in the great machinery of survival. The convoy has covered half the distance now. Thomas glances at the luminous dial of his watch, the hands marking the passage of time in small, steady increments. Behind him, the relative safety of the depot has faded into memory. Ahead lies the stretch of desert where intelligence reports have mentioned enemy patrols. German reconnaissance units probing the darkness, searching for exactly what this convoy represents. The moon hangs high and bright, a silent witness to their progress. In its light, the desert reveals itself in sharp detail. Every rock, every undulation of sand, every shadow that might conceal something or nothing at all. Thomas feels the weight of visibility, the paradox of needing the moon to navigate, while knowing it exposes them to watching eyes. The sergeant's voice crackles softly over the radio, calm and measured. Halfway mark, lads. Eyes sharp now. Maintain spacing. No lights. The words are routine, but everyone understands their meaning. This is where attention must sharpen, where fatigue must be pushed aside, where every sense must reach out into the silver darkness. Thomas adjusts his grip on the steering wheel, feeling the texture of worn leather beneath his palms. His co-driver sits straighter, no longer drowsing, scanning the horizon with renewed focus. In the truck behind them, a gunner shifts position, the movement barely visible in the rear-view mirror. A silhouette against moonlight, alert and ready. The engine's rhythm continues unchanged, steady and reliable. The tires whisper their endless conversation with the desert floor. But now there is something else in the air, a heightened awareness, a collective holding of breath. The convoy moves forward through the most exposed part of its journey. 23 trucks carrying their precious cargo through the ancient night. And the moon continues its slow arc across the sky, indifferent and beautiful, casting its silver light across everything below. The column stops without warning. No radio command, just the sudden absence of motion. Thomas's foot finds the brake, and the truck settles into stillness. His heart quickens in the silence that follows. Ahead, someone has seen something. Movement, perhaps. A shape that doesn't belong to the natural contours of the desert. In the moonlight, shadows can deceive. A rock becomes a vehicle. A dune becomes a tank. The mind, stretched taut by hours of vigilance, sees threats in every irregularity. Engines idle, a low collective murmur, barely louder than breathing. No one moves. No doors open. 23 trucks sit frozen in a silver landscape, waiting. Thomas's hands rest on the steering wheel, and he can feel his pulse in his fingertips. The seconds stretch. 30, 40, a minute. The sergeant's binoculars sweep the horizon from the lead vehicle. Every man watches, eyes straining against the deceptive clarity of moonlight. The wind has died completely. Even the sand seems to hold its breath. Then, movement again. But not the mechanical movement of enemy patrol. Something fluid. Something alive in a different way. A gazelle, startled from rest, by the rumble of approaching trucks, bounds across the open ground. Its legs extend and contract in graceful arcs. Moonlight catches the pale flash of its underside as it leaps. It moves with the freedom of something that belongs here, that knows this desert as home. For a moment, every man in the convoy watches this creature of grace and survival. It disappears into a shallow wadi, and the desert swallows it completely. A soft crackle over the radio. The sergeant's voice carrying the faint edge of relieved humor. All clear, moving on. Engines deepen their tone. The column rolls forward again. Hearts settle back into their steady rhythm. The gazelle is already far away, and the convoy returns to its patient progress beneath the moon, carrying its cargo through the ancient night. Thomas's hands rest on the steering wheel, feeling the vibration travel up through his arms. Steady, constant, like a heartbeat. His eyes trace the moonlit track ahead, but his mind drifts to the cargo behind him, the weight he carries through the darkness. Crates of ammunition, stacked and secured with rope. Each box holds rounds that will be chambered, aimed, fired. He doesn't think about what they'll strike, only that somewhere ahead, men are counting on them, running low, rationing their shots. Waiting behind the ammunition, sacks of flour and tins of rations. Simple things. Bread, bully, beef, tea, the kind of supplies that don't win battles in the history books, but without them, no battle can be fought at all. He thinks of mess tents, of men too tired to speak, spooning food into their mouths by lamplight. Medical supplies, packed in wooden cases, marked with red crosses. Bandages that will wrap wounds. Morphine that will ease pain. Sulfur powder that might mean the difference between a man going home or staying in the desert forever. Thomas has never been wounded, but he's seen the field hospitals, the quiet efficiency, the gentle hands, fuel drums lashed down tight, sloshing slightly with the truck's movement. Petrol that will power tanks, generators, ambulances. The lifeblood of a mechanized army, flowing through invisible veins across hundreds of miles. He is not a soldier in the way he once imagined. He fires no rifle, charges no position. But here, in the moonlit darkness, he understands his place in the vast machinery of war. The supply line is a thread, fragile, essential, connecting everything. The truck rolls on, carrying its precious burden. Thomas adjusts his grip on the wheel, feeling the weight of responsibility settle more comfortably across his shoulders, a weight he carries willingly through the silver night toward those who wait. The co-driver shifts in his seat, no longer sleeping. His name is William, and he's been quiet for most of the journey, content to let the desert and the engine speak. But now, in this deep pocket of the night, with the moon casting its steady silver light across the sand, he begins to talk. His voice is soft, barely rising above the rumble of the truck. He speaks of his father, who drove ambulances in the First War in France. The mud of the Somme, so different from this sand. The same moon, though, William says. The same stars his father would have seen, moving supplies through darkness, hoping to reach morning. Thomas listens, his hand steady on the wheel. There's comfort in the story, in the way it connects this night to other nights, this war to wars before. A thread running through time, linking fathers and sons, one generation's endurance passed quietly to the next. William's father never spoke much about those years, he says, but once, late in his life, he mentioned the sound of the engine, how it became a kind of companion in the dark, how you learn to hear its moods, its struggles, its steady determination to keep going. The words settle into the cabin like dust. Thomas nods, understanding without needing to respond. Around them, the convoy maintains its rhythm. 23 trucks, moving as one through the ancient emptiness. Each driver alone with his thoughts, yet connected by the shared experience of the journey. William falls quiet again, his story told. The silence that follows is not empty, but full of understanding, of the weight of history, of men doing what must be done because others did it before them. The moon continues its arc across the sky, patient and eternal, witness to all the stories told and untold beneath its light. The moon reaches its highest point in the vast North African sky, suspended directly overhead like a lantern hung in the darkness. At this zenith, its light falls straight down upon the convoy, casting the shortest shadows of the entire night. The desert transforms into something almost otherworldly, a landscape drained of all color, existing now only in gradients of silver and shadow, in shades of pewter and pearl. Thomas glances up through the windscreen and sees the lunar surface with unusual clarity, the dark Maria, the bright highlands, the ancient craters that have watched over Earth for billions of years, the same moon that shines over England tonight, over his sister's cottage in Somerset, over the green fields he can barely remember now, the same moon that has illuminated every army that ever crossed this desert, from Roman legions to Crusader knights, to the mechanized columns of this modern war. The visibility is remarkable. Thomas can see perhaps 2 miles in every direction. The undulating dews, the flat gravel plains, the occasional rocky outcrops standing like sentinels. Everything is rendered in monochrome, as if the world has become a photograph, a study in light and absence. The sand itself seems to glow faintly, reflecting the moonlight with a soft luminescence. His co-driver shifts in sleep, murmuring something unintelligible. The truck ahead maintains its steady pace, its canvas cover bleached, almost white in the moon's full glare. The tracks they leave behind are clearly visible, a trail of disturbed sand marking their passage across this timeless place. The beauty of it is undeniable. Even here, even now, Thomas feels the paradox of the moment, the danger and the peace, the machinery of war moving through a scene of such profound natural serenity. The moon cares nothing for human conflict. It simply shines, as it has always shone, patient and eternal. The convoy rolls on beneath that ancient light, small and temporary, against the vastness of sky and sand. The convoy passes through a section of desert, where the sand gives way to harder ground, and something else. In the moonlight, shapes emerge that are not natural, straight lines where nature makes none. The geometry of human hands, Roman columns perhaps, or older still. It's difficult to say in the silver light. The ruins stand like broken teeth against the sky, remnants of walls that once enclosed rooms where people lived and worked and loved. Thomas can make out the outline of what might have been a gateway, its arch long since collapsed. The trucks roll past slowly, their engines a modern rumble against these ancient stones. How many armies have crossed this ground? Roman legions marching in formation, Byzantine cavalry, Ottoman caravans, and now, in 1942, British lorries carrying ammunition and tinned beef. The thought is strangely comforting. The wars that seemed so urgent to those long ago soldiers are now just whispers in the archaeological record. Their empires have crumbled to these silent stones. The desert has outlasted them all, patient and eternal. One of the columns still stands nearly complete, rising perhaps 20 feet into the air. Moonlight catches its fluted surface, and for a moment Thomas can almost see it as it was, plastered, painted, part of a building that offered shade and shelter from this same sun that will rise in a few hours. The convoy moves on. The ruins fall behind, swallowed again by darkness and distance. But they remain, as they have remained for centuries, marking this ground as a place where humans have always struggled and built and passed on. The desert keeps all these stories, holding them in its vast silence. And tonight it adds one more, a column of trucks moving under moonlight, their drivers thinking of home, their cargo bound for a war that will itself one day be ancient history. The wheels turn steadily onward, carrying the present through the remnants of the past. The third hour settles over the convoy like a familiar weight. Time has become strange out here, in the moonlit emptiness. both stretched and compressed, each minute feeling longer than it should, yet the hours somehow slipping past unnoticed. Thomas feels the fatigue now, a heaviness behind his eyes that wasn't there before. The steady vibration of the truck has worked its way into his bones, a constant hum that threatens to lull him into dangerous drowsiness. He shifts in his seat, straightens his back, blinks deliberately against the silver monotony of the landscape rolling past. The steering wheel feels both familiar and foreign in his hands. How many miles now? How many more to go? The questions drift through his mind without urgency, without real need for answers. Beside him, his co-driver has gone quiet, head nodding forward, then jerking back up, fighting the same battle against sleep. In the mirror, Thomas can see the truck behind them, a dark shape maintaining its careful distance, headlights still dark, visible only as a moving shadow in the moonlight. The radio crackles softly, breaking the spell. The sergeant's voice comes through, weathered and steady, carrying the authority of experience and the warmth of genuine care. "Stay sharp, lads," he says, the words clear, despite the static. "Not far now. Keep your intervals. Keep your eyes open." The simple reminder helps. Thomas takes a deep breath of the cold night air flowing through the open window. He can taste the desert on it, dust and distance, and something ancient beyond naming. Around them, the landscape continues its endless repetition. Dunes and flats, rocks and shadows, all rendered in shades of silver and grey. The moon has begun its slow descent toward the western horizon, though dawn is still hours away. The convoy moves on through the third hour, each truck a small island of human will and mechanical purpose, crossing the vast indifference of the desert. Steady, persistent, almost there. The convoy moves through the third hour of its journey, and the moon hangs high above, casting its silver light across the endless desert. Thomas's eyes trace the horizon, then lift to the vast dome of stars overhead. Out here, far from any city, far from any electric light, the heavens reveal themselves in their full glory. The Milky Way stretches like a river of light across the darkness, and individual stars shine with a clarity that seems almost impossible. Then, without warning, a streak of brilliant white cuts across the sky. A shooting star, a meteor burning its brief bright path through the atmosphere. It lasts only a second, perhaps two, trailing fire across the constellation of Orion before vanishing as suddenly as it appeared. But in that moment, Thomas feels his breath catch. The beauty of it is unexpected, almost startling in its purity. He glances at his co-driver, who nods slowly, having seen it too. Through the open window, Thomas hears a low whistle from one of the trucks behind them, someone else bearing witness to this small miracle. In the midst of war, in the midst of tension and danger, and the weight of their cargo, the universe offers this gift, a reminder that there is still wonder in the world. The convoy continues its steady pace, the moment already passing into memory. But something has shifted, however subtly. The men carry with them now this shared experience, a streak of light across the darkness, beautiful and brief. It is a reminder that even here, even now, there are things larger than the war, older than human conflict, indifferent to the struggles of nations and armies. The stars continue their ancient wheel overhead. The moon continues its patient arc across the sky, and the convoy moves on through the silver desert, each man holding that moment of brightness in his mind, a small flame against the dark, a reason to believe that beauty persists, that wonder endures, even in the loneliest hours of the night. The destination is near now. Thomas can feel it in the way the sergeant's voice has changed over the radio, still cautious, but with an undertone of quiet relief. The convoy maintains its careful pace across the silver sand. There is no rushing, no carelessness. The discipline that has carried them safely through the night must hold until the very end. The moon, lower now in the western sky, casts longer shadows once again. The trucks move through pools of darkness and light, In steady rhythm, Thomas's hands rest lightly on the wheel, his body swaying gently with the motion of the vehicle. Every muscle knows this movement now, every sense attuned to the particular sound his engine makes, the specific feel of the suspension over this terrain. Around him, the desert continues its ancient silence. The wind has died down to almost nothing. The air is very cold now, that deep cold that comes in the hours before dawn. Thomas can see his breath when he exhales, pale wisps that vanish immediately in the moonlight. The column holds its formation perfectly, 23 trucks moving as one organism, each driver maintaining the precise distance from the vehicle ahead. No lights, no unnecessary sound, just the steady rumble of engines and the soft crunch of tires on packed earth. Thomas thinks about the men waiting at the forward position, men who have been counting on this convoy, men who will eat the food he carries, fire the ammunition, receive the medical supplies that might save a life. The supply line as an act of faith. One group of men trusting another group to cross the dangerous dark and arrive. The navigator's voice comes through, calm and certain, confirming their position, confirming the route, everything proceeding as it should. Thomas feels the weight of fatigue in his bones, but also something else, the quiet satisfaction of a task nearly complete, of promises nearly kept. The desert rolls on beneath the wheels, endless and patient, as it has for millennia. The landscape begins to speak in a language Thomas has learned to read. There, to the left, a rock formation shaped like a broken tooth, exactly where the map promised it would be. The navigator's voice crackles softly over the radio, confirming what several pairs of eyes have already seen. The first landmark, a signpost in a world without signs. The trucks maintain their steady pace, but something shifts in the air. A subtle easing of shoulders, hands gripping steering wheels, just a fraction less tightly. The sergeant's voice comes through again, calm and measured. Stay alert, lads, nearly home. Another landmark emerges from the silver darkness, a wadi, a dry riverbed, cutting across their path at the predicted angle. The lead truck navigates the gentle slope down and up again, and each vehicle follows in turn. The suspension creaks, sand whispers against metal. Then they're across, continuing on. The moon has travelled far across the sky since they began. It hangs now in the west, lower, casting longer shadows that stretch toward the coming dawn. The quality of the light has changed. Still bright, still silver, but somehow older, more tired. The night itself growing weary. Thomas can feel the destination approaching, though he cannot yet see it. It's something in the air, in the way the navigator's voice has relaxed, in the sergeant's quiet confidence. They've done this run before, many times. The desert may be vast and trackless, but memory carves invisible roads through it. A third landmark, a cluster of rocks arranged in a way that seems almost deliberate, though it's surely just the work of wind and time. The navigator marks it off. They're in the corridor now, the final approach to the forward depot. The convoy moves through the moonlit desert like a river, finding its way home to the sea, patient, certain, inevitable. Each turn of the wheels brings them closer to rest, to the completion of the night's careful work. And in the distance, barely visible, Thomas thinks he sees something that might be the dark outline of camouflage netting against the stars. The lead truck slows as the convoy approaches the forward position. Thomas can see the darkest silhouette of the depot against the moonlit sand. Low berms, scattered vehicles, the angular shapes of supply tents. Everything is still. Everything is waiting. Then, a light. A single torch beam flashes 3 times from the darkness ahead. The challenge. Thomas feels his heartbeat quicken slightly. Though he's done this before, there is always that moment of uncertainty, that breath held between question and answer. The sergeant in the lead vehicle responds with 2 flashes, then 1, then 2 again. The agreed upon sequence, the code that means friend, not foe. The light ahead goes dark for a moment, that stretches longer than it should. Thomas's hands rest on the steering wheel. The engine idles with a low, patient rumble. He can hear the wind moving across the desert, carrying grains of sand that tick softly against the truck's metal body. Somewhere behind him, a man coughs quietly. The whole column waits in that suspended moment. Then the light ahead flashes once more. Acknowledgement, recognition. The tension releases like a breath, slowly exhaled. A figure emerges from the shadows, waving them forward with measured gestures. A sentry, rifle slung across his back, face obscured by shadow and moonlight. The lead truck begins to move again, and Thomas follows, maintaining the careful distance. They roll forward slowly, passing the sentry post where two men stand. Watch. Their faces turn toward the convoy with expressions of quiet relief. Fresh supplies mean survival. Fresh supplies mean the line can hold. The perimeter opens before them, a space carved from the desert's indifference, defended by tired men and careful discipline. Thomas feels the shift as they cross that invisible boundary from the exposed desert into relative safety. Not complete safety. There is no such thing here, but the small comfort of walls and weapons and watchful eyes. The challenge has been answered. The convoy has arrived. The long night's journey is nearly complete. The convoy rolls forward through the perimeter markers, and Thomas feels the shift immediately. The subtle transition from the open desert's vast uncertainty into something resembling sanctuary. The trucks slow to a crawl, tires crunching over packed earth that has been travelled by countless vehicles before them. Sentries stand at their posts, silhouettes against the pre-dawn darkness, rifles held loosely but ready. One raises a hand in weary acknowledgement as Thomas's truck passes. The gesture is simple, tired, human. The forward supply depot spreads before them, a collection of camouflaged tents, stacked crates, and carefully dispersed vehicles. Everything is positioned with deliberate spacing, protection against what might fall from the sky. Sandbag walls create small fortresses around fuel dumps and ammunition stores. The moonlight catches on the angular shapes, casting geometric shadows across the compound. Thomas guides his truck to the designated unloading area, following the hand signals of a corporal with a hooded torch. The beam dances in the darkness, directing each vehicle to its place with practiced efficiency. One by one, the trucks of the convoy find their positions, forming neat rows. The engines cut, and for a moment, the silence is almost shocking after hours of mechanical rumble. Then the smaller sounds emerge, boots on hard ground, the creak of tailgates being lowered, the murmur of voices greeting the new arrivals. Men climb down from the trucks, movements stiff after the long journey. Thomas's legs protest as he steps onto solid ground. The earth feels strange and still beneath his feet after so many hours of vibration. A lieutenant approaches with a clipboard, checking manifests by torchlight. His voice is quiet, professional, grateful. "Well done, lads. We've been waiting for this." The words are simple, but they carry weight. The mission is complete. The supplies have arrived. And for now, in this small fortified space, beneath the descending moon, there is a measure of safety, a moment of rest, earned through the long night's careful journey across the silver desert. The engines fall silent, one by one, and the quiet that follows feels almost sacred. For hours, the world has been filled with the rumble of motors and the crunch of tires on sand. Now, there is only the soft whisper of the wind and the distant murmur of voices as men begin to emerge from their vehicles. Thomas climbs down from the cab, his legs stiff from the long drive. The ground feels strange beneath his boots, solid, unmoving, after so many hours of vibration. Around him, the convoy has arranged itself in neat rows, trucks parked with practiced precision, even in the darkness. The unloading begins without ceremony. Men move with quiet efficiency, their movements economical, born of countless repetitions. Tailgates drop with muffled clangs. Hands reach for crates and boxes, passing them down in careful chains. The supplies that have traveled so far through the moonlit desert now find their destination. There is a rhythm to the work. Lift, carry, stack, return. No one speaks more than necessary. Words are replaced by gestures, by the understanding that comes from shared purpose. A corporal checks items against a manifest, his pencil scratching softly against paper, his breath visible in the cold desert air. The moon, lower now in the western sky, casts long shadows across the depot. Men move through bands of silver light and darkness, their forms appearing and disappearing like ghosts. The crates they carry hold ammunition, tinned food, medical supplies, jerry cans of precious water and fuel, the lifeblood of the army. Thomas helps maneuver a heavy box of rations, feeling the weight of it in his shoulders and back. There is satisfaction in this final act, in delivering what was entrusted to them. The journey measured not just in miles crossed, but in promises kept. The work continues, steady and unhurried. And somewhere in the rhythm of it, the lifting and the carrying, the soft footfalls and the careful stacking, there is a kind of peace, the peace of a task nearly complete, of men who have done what was asked of them and done it well. Someone has brewed tea. The smell reaches Thomas before he sees it. That particular aroma of strong, oversteeped leaves, mixed with the metallic tang of desert water, and the faint sweetness of tinned milk. A corporal from the forward depot stands beside a small Primus stove, its blue flame steady in the pre-dawn stillness, pouring the dark liquid into an assortment of enamel mugs. Thomas accepts a cup, wrapping both hands around its warmth. The metal is almost too hot to hold, but he doesn't let go. The heat seeps into his fingers, his palms, travelling up his wrists. He hadn't realized how cold his hands had become during the long night drive, the steering wheel drawing the warmth from them hour after hour. He takes a sip. It's bitter and strong and perfect. The tea scalds his tongue slightly, but he welcomes it, a sensation that confirms he's here, he's arrived, the journey is complete. Around him, other drivers gather in small clusters, their faces visible now in the growing light. They speak in low voices, comparing notes about the journey, sharing cigarettes, simply standing together in the companionship of shared experience. The men stationed at the forward depot move among them, expressing quiet gratitude for the supplies, asking news from the rear areas. Thomas notices how thin some of these men look, how worn their uniforms are. This is what the supply run means. Not just ammunition and fuel, but tea and tinned meat and mail from home. The ordinary things that make endurance possible. He takes another sip, feeling the warmth spread through his chest. The moon has descended toward the western horizon now, its light softening, yielding to the approach of dawn. In a few hours he'll make the return journey. But for now, there is this moment, this cup of tea, this warmth, this brief island of rest. The simple comfort of it settles over him like a blanket, easing the tension from his shoulders, quieting his mind. The moon begins its slow descent toward the western horizon, tracing the same arc it has travelled for countless ages. Thomas watches it from where he sits, his back against the wheel of his truck, the metal still warm from the engine's heat. The lunar face that seemed so bright and full at its zenith now carries a softer quality, a gentleness that comes with the promise of approaching dawn. The shadows that had grown short and sharp beneath the moon's highest point now lengthen again, stretching eastward across the sand in dark fingers. Every rock, every vehicle, every man casts a twin in shadow, as if the desert is slowly remembering how to make duplicates of the world. The quality of the moonlight changes too. Less silver now, more golden, anticipating the sun that will follow. Around the forward depot, the work of unloading continues with quiet efficiency. The sounds are muted, respectful of the hour. The soft thud of crates being set down, the whisper of canvas being folded, the low murmur of voices giving direction. Someone laughs, briefly, then catches themselves. as if remembering that the night still holds. The temperature has reached its lowest point. The cold is clean and sharp, making the air feel thin and pure. Thomas pulls his coat tighter and watches his breath materialize in small clouds that dissolve into the darkness. The stars above remain brilliant, though he knows their time is limited now. In an hour, perhaps two, they will fade as the greater light arrives. The moon touches the horizon, balanced there for a moment like a silver coin on the edge of the world. Then it begins to sink, slowly, slowly, taking with it the strange illumination that has guided them through the night. Thomas feels his eyelids growing heavy, the exhaustion of the journey finally catching up with him. The moon descends, and with it, the long night begins its gentle surrender to rest. The drivers are given a few hours to rest before the return journey. It is a gift, these hours, unexpected in their generosity, though the men are too tired to feel surprise. Thomas finds a quiet spot near the perimeter, where supply crates are stacked in careful rows, creating a windbreak against the desert breeze. Someone has spread canvas tarps on the ground. The earth beneath is still cool from the night, though the coming day will bake it hard again. He wraps himself in a wool blanket, rough against his chin, smelling faintly of diesel and dust, and the sweat of other men who have used it before. The exhaustion is profound. It lives in his shoulders, his lower back, his hands still curved, as though gripping the steering wheel. But it is a satisfying exhaustion, the kind that comes from work completed, from miles travelled safely, from cargo delivered intact. His body aches, but his mind is quiet. Around him, other drivers settle into their own resting places. The sounds are gentle, the rustle of blankets, the soft scrape of boots being pulled off, the occasional murmur of conversation already fading into silence. Someone coughs once, then is still. The mood hangs lower now, pale and tired itself, as though it too has worked through the long night. The stars are beginning their retreat. In the east, the sky holds the faintest suggestion of colour. Not yet dawn, but the promise of it. Thomas closes his eyes. Behind his lids, he can still see the ribbon of moonlit desert, unreeling endlessly. The hypnotic rhythm of the journey still hums in his bones, but it is fading now, giving way to something deeper. The wind whispers across the sand. Somewhere, a sentry walks his rounds, footsteps soft and steady. The war continues, always continues, but here, in this moment, there is rest, and Thomas, wrapped in his blanket beneath the fading stars, lets himself sink into the waiting darkness of sleep. Thomas lies still, wrapped in a rough wool blanket that smells faintly of diesel and dust. The ground beneath him is hard, unyielding, but he barely notices anymore. His body has learned to find rest wherever it can. Above him, the last stars are fading into the pale wash of dawn. The moon, that faithful companion of the night's journey, hangs low on the western horizon now, a ghost of silver against the brightening sky. He watches it for a moment, remembering how it illuminated their path across the desert, how it turned the sand to something almost magical. He thinks of the miles covered in darkness, the steady rhythm of the engine, the weight of the cargo now safely delivered. Somewhere nearby, men are already using the supplies he brought, eating the rations, loading the ammunition, treating the wounded with the medical supplies. The invisible thread that connects them all, this vast web of effort and endurance. A gentle breeze stirs, carrying the coolness that comes just before sunrise. He can hear the quiet sounds of the depot waking, a distant clank of metal, low voices, the scrape of a shovel against sand. But these sounds seem far away, part of another world. He thinks of home, briefly. Green fields, rain, his sister's laugh. But even these memories are soft now, blurred at the edges by exhaustion. They don't hurt the way they sometimes do. They're just there, like old photographs, tender and distant. The desert will be here when he wakes. The war will be here. There will be another convoy, another night, another journey across the moonlit sand. But for now, for these few precious hours, there is only this: the warmth of the blanket, the solid earth beneath him, the vast sky above growing lighter with each passing moment. His breathing slows, deepens, the tension drains from his shoulders, his jaw, his hands. The journey is complete. The night has passed, and in the gathering dawn of the North African desert, Thomas finally peacefully sleeps.